Yay, I did it right. Okay. As you might know, this is the end of the year of our readings, and really we're already into going back and beginning in Genesis. So if you have one of the Bible reading journals, you already began and I already began reading and getting ready for next week's class. Tonight we're going to wrap up the Torah and the book of Deuteronomy and look at things in there, and then I'm ready for you to ask me anything you want to ask me about Torah. Okay, so get ready, because anything you want, I don't know that I'll know the answer, but you can ask anything that you want to ask about Torah. I want to let you know a little bit about where we're going next week. Next Wednesday night, I will not be here, but my wife will be here. And I've already got the notes ready, so I'm going over the notes with my wife, and then my wife will add all of her loveliness into it, and it'll be a really nice evening. I'm leaving Monday night to go down to Guatemala to do a wellspring seminar for about 100 leaders down there, kind of out in the boondocks around the lake. But it's gorgeous where we're going to go, where I'm going to go, because I'll be the only one. So if you remember, pray while I'm down there that there will be a lot of people that will get delivered and will know all about how to live their lives and how to help those in their congregations, because there's a lake down there. It's like you go into the main Guatemala city, which is big, millions people live there, big buildings, traffic mess. But then you get out, and the rest of Guatemala is farmers and villages that are not really large. And the one where I go, I think they have about 11,000 people, and that's a large village. But it's around this lake, way up in the mountains, and all around the lake, this guy that I visit there, pastor that we visit there, he began the congregation where he is like 50 years ago or something like that, and now there are 80 churches all around this lake that are now in connection with him, and it's really neat. So I'm going to go down and do that for a week. And the notes that you have been reading, I hope that you hold on to them. Okay? Next year, you're not going to get these notes again. You're going to get new notes. And the new notes are going to look different. It's going to have less of my writing kind of a background, and it's going to have a little bit more looking at words and the meaning in Hebrew, and a little more in-depth into the meaning in Hebrew. And you're going to read some rabbis' words. Not this rabbi, but some other rabbis, and then we'll bring them all together. And in addition to that, you're writing your own. Okay? I imagine there are going to be things that God reveals to you when you're reading and when you're writing in your journals that you might want to bring up. And that would be all right. See if we can do that. Okay? Any questions about that? Nope. Colonel, glad you're here. Yes. 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 Well, in addition to that, the week that I get back, I hope we are going to have someone else among us where we will be learning the alphabet, and the meanings of all the letters. If she gets back in time, right, Patty? She's going to be gone when I'm gone, but she's not going to Guatemala. Oh, okay. 6th. So it'll be a couple weeks then. You'll be gone on Wednesdays. Wednesdays. All right, we'll begin that when we begin Abraham. So that'll work. A quiz? Maybe at the end. You mean tonight? It'll be oral. What is the first letter of the Hebrew Aleph Beit? Aleph. Very good. What is the next letter, the second letter of the Hebrew Aleph Beit? Beit. Brilliant. What is the last letter of the Hebrew Aleph Beit? Tav. What is the eighth letter? No, it's not Da. I don't know either. I'd have to look it up to know the numbers. Anyway, this is basically the end of Deuteronomy, and it's like the last words of Moses. Okay, and last week in your reading, you read the Song of Moses. And this is what happens next. And the blessing of Moses, as it is, the word blessing in Hebrew is barak, okay, which is where you get this zot ha-barakah. That's a blessing. To bless is barak. Barak means kneel down on one knee and give a gift. Okay, barak is used as the word bless, and it is used as the word kneel in Hebrew. So when you read about Isaac going to get a wife, or Abraham's servant going to get a wife for Isaac, and Rebekah or Rivkah was there, and he knelt his camels down. They knelt down. That's the word barak. They knelt down. So you would either translate that, they knelt, or they blessed. But that doesn't work. Camels don't bless, but they kneel. Okay, so see, Hebrew is not one word, one meaning. Okay, it might be one word, 8 meanings. It might be 3 words, similar meanings, but they all have nuances in the meanings, which makes it a very dynamic language, but it's also very down to earth, because most of the words have their origins in things that have to do with the land, or with growing, or with flocks, or things like that, things that you observe in nature. But we'll learn more of that in the next year as we go. Okay? Now, how many of you read Deuteronomy 32? Did a lot of you read it? Half of you read it? Well, then let's read it. Who would like to read? Okay, I'm going to hand you the mic. It's on. I'll let you manage it and hear the word of the Lord from Deuteronomy 32.
Give ear, O heavens.
Okay, you're going to have to hold it up a little bit closer.
Give ear, O heavens, and I will speak. Let the earth hear the words of my mouth. May my teachings trickle the rain, my speech distill the dew, like gentle rain on new grass, like showers on tender plants. For I will proclaim Adonai's name, ascribe greatness to our God. The rock, blameless is his work. Indeed, all his ways are just. God is faithfulness, without iniquity, righteous and upright is he. Did it corrupt him? No, the blemish is his children's, a generation crooked and twisted. Is this how you pay back Adonai, O foolish, unwise people? Isn't he your father who ransomed you? He made you and established you. Remember the days of antiquity. Understand the years across generations. Ask your father, and he will tell you, your elders, and they will say to you. When Elion gave nations their heritage, when he separated the sons of man, he set boundaries for the people by the number of Bnei Yisrael. But Adonai's portion is his people, Jacob is the share of his inheritance. He found them in the wilderness land, in the void of a howling waste. He surrounded him, cared for him, guarded him as the pupil of his eyes, as an eagle stirs up its nest, hovers over its young. He spreads his wings, catches him, lifts him up on his pinions. Adonai alone guided him. There was no foreign god with him. He made him mount the heights of the land, so he ate the produce of the field. He suckled him with honey from a rock, with oil from a flinty boulder, butter of cattle and milk of a flock, with fat of lambs, rams of the Bashan and the he-goats, with fat of the kidneys of wheat and blood of grapes you drank. But Jeshurun grew fat and kicked. You got fat, you grew thick, you gorged. He forsook God who made him. He mocked the rock of his salvation. He made him jealous with strangers, with abominations. They angered him. They sacrificed to demons, a non-god, gods they had not known, to new ones who came in lately, ones your fathers had not dreaded. The rock who birthed you, you ignored. You forgot God who brought you forth. Adonai saw, and he spurned his sons and his daughters out of vexation. He said, I will hide my face from them. I want to see their hereafter, for they are an upside-down generation, children with no faithfulness in them. They made me jealous with a non-God. They vexed me with airy idols. So I will make them jealous with a non-people. With the foolish nation I will vex them. For fire has ignited in my nostrils.
Whoa.
It will burn to Sheol beneath, devour the earth and her produce, and scorch the foundations of the mountains. I will heap calamities upon them. With my arrows I will finish them, wasted by famine, ravaged by plague and pestilence, so bitter, fangs of beast I'll let loose on them, with venom of creepers in the dust. Outside the sword deals death, and inside terror to both young men and young women, infants with men of gray hair. I would have said, I will hack them to pieces, make the memory of them cease from mankind, except I dread the taunt of the enemy, lest their foes might misconstrue, lest they say, Oh, our hand is held high, and Adonai has not done all of this. For they are a nation lacking counsel among them. There's no understanding. If they were wise, they would discern this. They would understand their hereafter. How can one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight unless their rock had sold them and Adonai had handed them over? Surely their rock is not like our rock, as even our enemies judge. For their vine is from the vine of Sodom and from the terraces of Gomorrah. Its grapes are grapes of poison, bitter clusters on it. Venom of serpents is their wine. Poison of vipers so cruel, it is not stored up with me, sealed up in my treasuries. Vengeance is mine, and payback for the time when their foot staggers. Surely.
Hold it up just a little bit more. There you go.
Vengeance is mine, and payback for the time when their foot staggers. Surely their day of disaster is near. What is prepared rushes on them. For Adonai will guide his people, for his servants. He will relent when he sees that strength is gone and no one is left, slave or free.
Ugh.
He will say, Where are their gods? The rock they took refuge in. Who ate the fat of their sacrifices and drank the wine of their libation? Let them rise up and help you and be a shelter over you. See now that I am he. There are no other gods besides me. I bring death and give life. I have wounded, but I will heal, and none can rescue from my hand. Yes, I lift my hand up to heaven and say, as I myself live forever, when I sharpen my lightning sword and my hand sees it in judgment, I will return vengeance on my foes, and those who hate me I will pay back. I will make my arrows drunk from blood, and my sword will devour flesh, the blood of the slain and the captive, the head of the leaders of the enemy. Make his people rejoice, O nations, for he will avenge the blood of his servants. He will return vengeance on his foes and atone for the land of his people. Then Moses came and spoke all these words of this song to the ears of the people, he and Joshua, son of Nun. When Moses finished speaking all these words to all Israel, he said to them, put in your hearts all the words that I call as a witness against you today, that you may command your children to keep and do all the words of this Torah. For it is not an empty thing for you, because it is your life. By this word you will prolong your days on the land, which you are crossing over the Jordan to possess. On that very day Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, go up this mountain to the Aravim, Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, facing Jericho, and see the land of Canaan, which I am giving to Bnei Israel as a possession. On the mountain that you are ascending, there be gathered to your people, as Aaron your brother died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his people, because you both broke faith with me among Bnei Israel at the waters of Meribah and Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin, because you did not treat me as holy in the midst of Bnei Israel. For you will see the land from afar, but you will not enter there, into the land that I am giving to Bnei Israel.
Whew. Wowzer. That's A, long. B, that isn't easy to know what he means in that. What did you get while you were hearing it? What was that all about? Okay, all right, yeah. He was angry and fire came out of his mouth. And that line that you read about his nostrils, you know that the reason that that's in there is the idea of anger is related to your nose and related to your nostrils, which is why when you read that he is slow to anger, literally it's he is long-nosed. Takes a long while. But in this, there's anger that he expresses to Israel, right? When I hear this, I hear almost an outgrowth or a longer working out of the little line that we heard in Genesis with Noah, back in the days of Noah, when it said that Jehovah looked at the earth and looked at the people that he had made, and he was grieved in his own heart that he made him, because they were violent. They were just corrupt and violent. All right? And what this is about Israel being the one that he has chosen as his own, and what they did with that. Okay? So that would have been the generation that died in the wilderness, right? But what's amazing about this is if you go beyond this into the rest of the history of Israel, after Moses dies, they do this again and again and again and again. And in a way, that's like the human dilemma, right? We keep doing it again and again. We keep going around, and there will be something like a revival. I just think about the U.S. I think about America, and I think about all the great revivals we've had. If we had a great revival, then things got better. People got better. Morality was more real, all of that. And then when we get away and we leave him behind and we get away from God, what happens? Things start going the other direction. And there's murder and there's mayhem and there's people that have lost their minds, it seems like. But that's what happened to Israel. So in a way, when you look at what is happening in our own day, and not just in the United States of America, but all over the world, really, when you look at that, in a way, it's like, oh, that breaks my heart. What's happening to our nation? That's how God is. That's how he feels when he looks at his world that he made, right? Okay, so you're getting a little bit of that in there, but you don't want to live in that. Because if you live in that, then that becomes anger and bitterness, and we don't want to go there, we don't want to live there. So what do? Follow his ways, be a light to the nations, pray, repent, and live your life. And watch God work, because I believe he's at work right now. But anyway, that's the whole Song of Moses, which is really the history of Israel's deliverance and redemption. And then I would add to that the history of their deliverance and their redemption and their falling, okay, which they do over and over again. Okay, and Moses warns over and over again in Deuteronomy about what is going to happen if you do not walk in my ways, then this is what's going to happen. Now, here's what I think is amazing, okay? The book of Job is a little bit about this. By the way, Gar and I were looking at names and what names mean. Does anybody know what the word Eov, which is Job's name, does anybody know what it means? Do you know what it means? The one who is hated, the loathed one, the hated one. Eov, that's his name. Which would make me ask, why? Why was he given that name? And I don't know that the Bible answers, but there may be some other readings of ancient Israel where you could find some answers on that. But that's sidebar. Okay? Where sure, but Job was righteous, like all of us are righteous, but he wasn't flawless, right? I mean, there were things that were going on in his life and went on in his life. Somebody asked recently, well, if you are going to be a follower of Yehovah and Yeshua, and you are following the commandments, how many must you follow in order to really have a relationship with him? How many of his commandments? Do you have to get them all right? Which one? You will have no other gods. Well, that's a really good answer. Depends on where you are. Depends on how much you know, right? To the one who knows much or is given much, much will be required, right? So if you're only beginning, then don't worry about it. Begin. Do what you're able to do, you know? And a lot of Torah are things that we already know as people who have morals, people who want goodness in the world. We already know, right? Okay? Now, as we move into the next chapter of Deuteronomy, it's all about the blessings that Moses gives over Israel. And it looks a lot like the end of Genesis, where Jacob blesses all of the sons of Israel, his sons. It looks a lot like that, even uses those names. So Moses is going to bless the tribes by using the names that Jacob gave to his sons. All right? And the order that they're in, by the way, it begins in Deuteronomy 33:1. This is the blessing with which Moses, the man of God, blessed Bnei Israel before his death. Okay? Now, the fact that Moses is known as the man of God means, or can mean, that Moses is a prophet of God. Because man of God is one of the phrases that's used for all of the prophets in Israel, like Elijah and Elisha and all of them. People go and they ask, where is the man of God? That means, where is Elijah? Where's the prophet? Moses is known as the great prophet. Now, he wasn't the first prophet in the Bible. Who was? According to the Bible. No. According to the Bible, when that word is mentioned first, it's with Abraham. When Abimelech, all right, has the wombs of everybody in his land have dried up because he's thinking about Abraham's wife, but he doesn't know that he's Abraham's wife. God reveals it to him, and then Abimelech goes to Abraham, and he's like, "What are you doing, giving me your wife?" And Abraham was like, "Well, I didn't think that God was here, and I worried about my life and her life and all that." Anyway, God comes to Abimelech, says, "Go to Abraham, have him pray for you, because he is a prophet." And that's when it's mentioned in the Bible. That doesn't mean that Noah wasn't one. It just means that's when it's mentioned in the Bible. That's number one quiz question. Who was the first prophet mentioned as a prophet in the Bible? Oh, that would be Genesis 14-ish. Somewhere around in there. See, so I didn't pass the exam either. All right, notice in the beginning of this, in Deuteronomy 33, when we heard it read that Yehovah came out of the mountains down south of the promised land. Okay, I believe those are the exact words that were used, that he came out of the mountains. Sorry, I need my notes. Verses 2 through 5. Well, that was in the Tree of Life version that you read that. Okay, that he came out of the mountains. And that doesn't mean that he only lives in the mountains. Okay? But you have to remember, you're dealing with an ancient mind. Not God, but Israel. Okay? And you're dealing with an Israel that had lived in Egypt for hundreds of years. And all of the other gods of the ancient world, okay, all of the other gods were based in a locale, and they basically never left. Okay? So you have Baal. Okay, where is Baal? Baal is up north in the northern regions of the Promised Land, near the area of Bashan. And we went over that when we were doing Matthew one night. We'll do a little bit more of that this week on Friday night. But you get what I mean? So you have the god of Anchorage, and then you have the god of Fairbanks, and then you have the god of Juneau, all right? And they're not one god. They're different gods. They're regional gods. So you have that idea. So when you hear language like Yehovah came out of the mountains, all right, it's easy to get the idea that, oh, he's the God of those mountains. Well, don't we read about that with Jacob? Didn't that happen with Jacob? Remember, he went and he laid his head down on a rock. Where was he? Beit El, okay, near Luz. And he laid his head on a rock and he had a dream about the ladder and the angels going up and down, and then in the morning he named it, all right? Beit El. What does that mean? House of El. The house of Elohim. The house of God. Okay? So then you read about him leaving, and then you read about him going back basically to where God is. So there's not this realization like there is with us, because we've lived most of our lives with the knowledge that God is everywhere. God is not regional, all right? They they weren't aware of that. They didn't know that. This is an ancient people, so they didn't know that God is everywhere. Yeah. God is not limited, in other words. Even in the tabernacle, you have the idea that God is there. He lives in the Holy of Holies. He lives above the cherubim, right? But that doesn't mean that he's limited there, okay? And anyway, what was that all about? The ark and the cherubim and the cloud and all of that. Why? Why is all that there? Did God really want to live with Israel in a box? Was he like, all right, I want you to build me a box because I want to live with you. So I'm going to come down there and live in that box. And once a year, one guy can visit with me, come in and visit with me. Was that what God wanted? Was that what it was all about? Yeah, symbolic of what was in heaven. Okay? So I'm going to come down there and I'm going to teach you by what you're going to build, because I'm going to give you the directions on how to build it, and you're going to learn about my world. You're going to learn about heaven, the heavens. So you have all of that worship and everything that was done to learn about the heavens. The lambs that were slain. What were those all about? Well, those were teaching Israel about the lamb that was slain, right? Okay. So, yes. Holy ones. Holy ones. Yep. Edoshim. Those are the holy ones. All his holy ones are in his hand. What does that mean? I'm glad you brought that up. What does that mean? All his holy ones are in his hand. In the complete Jewish Bible, it reads differently. What verse is that? It says, and with him were myriads of holy ones. At his right hand was a fiery law for them. Who are these holy ones? Who do you think it means? No, it's not. It means when he arrived, when God arrived on the mountain, okay, he brought with him a law. Right? Torah. But when he arrived on the mountain, he wasn't alone. So who would have been with him? What do you mean? Well, I know, but if you back up and read a little bit more of the context of that verse, okay, I'll begin this complete Jewish Bible. Adonai came from Sinai, from Seir. He dawned on his people, shone forth from Mount Paran, and with him were myriads of holy ones. At his right hand was a fiery law for them. He truly loves the peoples. All his holy ones are in your hands. Sitting at your feet, they receive your instruction. So it's about Israel. You're right. His people. It's about his people. They're the holy ones there.
Now I'm hearing this again, and I still believe what I was saying, but you're talking about other heavenly divine creatures with him?
What about the other holy ones that are with him? They're there. The myriad of holy ones are there. Okay? So sometimes I think that it's not easy for us to realize the mind of Israel in that day, in their worldview, what it was like, that the idea that there were other gods was, well, yeah. What do you mean there are other gods? Duh, everybody knows there's other gods. There's hundreds of gods, okay? Today, there are hundreds of gods. Now, some of us, not me, but some of us have the idea that that doesn't really mean anything because gods aren't really real. Okay? Well, the wooden object that represents a god is not a god. But that does not mean that there's not a God behind it. It doesn't mean that there's not a real being behind whatever that is. Okay? If you are going to believe as they believed in Israel, there are other beings that exist that are divinities. They're demons, if you will. Okay? But then there are angels, right? There's the heavenly court, whatever that is, where Jehovah meets with his holy ones, okay? And I think that's the language in Genesis 1 is about that, okay? You those of you that already read, you're already reading in your reading, so you're in the second chapter of Genesis. But in Genesis 1, did you notice? And let us make man in our image, okay? What? And they're all, there's a lot of different theologies that work on trying to explain who the us is in there. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. That's one explanation. Another explanation is it's the plural of majesty. Like when the Queen of England goes, "You may leave us." All right? She means her. She doesn't mean us, but she uses that royal plural. Or maybe that's what it is. But there's a lot of others that believe it literally means us, as in a divine room or boardroom, or however you want to look at it, of heavenly beings that God meets with regularly. Well, that's all over the Bible. We were talking about the book of Job. It's right there in the beginning of the book of Job. God's having a meeting with the heavenly council. Okay? It happens with Abraham. It happens over and over again. All right? So what I'm getting at is, if you want to know what are they believing, how are they viewing the world, that's it. You got to get into it with that. Okay? All right, let's move on in my notes here. You have the you have the word that was written that Israel is Jeshurun. So when you got to that word reading, you didn't know what that word was. And, it's not a word that's in the Bible very much. It's only mentioned in this song, and it's mentioned in Isaiah once. Okay, that word is a word that means Israel, but it literally is from the word Yashar, which means upright one. Okay? So the book of Yashar is the book of the upright one, the book of Jasher. But it was a name for Israel that is a poetic name. One of the things that makes this not easy to read is it's all poetry. Right? So I think that's what James is bringing up with. Look, this is not literal. This is poetic. And you're right about that. It is. Okay, and there I listed where it is in Isaiah 44. Okay, Yehovah was made or became Israel's king when the heads of the people gathered, which they did when they accepted his covenant at the ceremony back in the book of Exodus. You remember that? Okay? And then think about this, though. So here's Israel, and here's Yehovah on the mountain, coming down, giving them this Torah, this instructions, which in their mind was a great gift. Okay? Even today, in the minds of Jews, Torah is not a bummer. Torah is a gift. But in that day, it was really a gift. Why? Because none of the other gods had anything written down as to what you needed to do. Okay? You never knew what the other gods wanted, what they expected of you, whether they were going to be mad one moment and nice the next moment. You never knew. So now you have the God of Israel who's laying it out and going, here you go. This is what I expect of you. This is the way I want you guys to live. And they had to have been like, what? That's amazing. That's one of the reasons why we read earlier in Deuteronomy where God, he said, look, if you guys follow this way of life, all the other nations are going to look at you and they're going to go, oi, what nation is there on earth that their God gave them instructions and wrote them down? That's amazing. So it's like only in the last couple thousand years in Christianity where we have this idea that the law or Torah is a bummer. Well, are you living by law or grace? Right? And my answer is yes. You don't have to live by one or the other. In the minds of Israel, the law is grace. Torah is God's grace because he's letting you know, look, don't have any other gods. Okay? Don't steal. Can you imagine if all we had was the 10 Commandments? If all of us agreed this is the way that we're going to live our lives, what would happen in our world? Would it be different? Yeah. Okay? So now Israel accepts Yehovah as their husband and their king. And then how many years later do we have in the book of Samuel where Israel goes, you know what? We want to be like the other nations because they have a human king. They have a real guy that we can reach out and touch and meet with and yada, yada, yada. We want one of those. And remember God's words to them when they asked through the prophet Samuel, who looked at Israel basically and went, no, you don't want that. And they said, yeah, we do. We want a king. You do not want one because here's what's going to happen. He's going to raise your income tax every year. He's going to put you in the army and send you off fighting his wars, okay, for his own financial gain. Boy, sure I'm glad it isn't like that now. But God comes to Samuel and says, don't worry about it. I'm already ready. And I'm going to give them one. I'm going to give them what they ask for. Because it's not you they're rejecting. It's me. So when they asked for a king, they were rejecting God as their king. So he gave them what they asked for, which was a guy, what was his name? Saul. What does it mean? You asked. That's what his name means. His name means asked. I thought, isn't that weird? All right, here's your guy. That one right over there. What's his name? You asked. So, and then he was really good at the beginning and then went downhill, didn't he? Okay, now Moses then begins to bless each tribe except one, okay, beginning with Reuben. And to us, we would look at that and we would remember in Genesis, we'd be like, oh, that makes sense. Reuben is number one, firstborn. So he's going to begin there and go down the list. Nope, he doesn't begin there and go down the list. So a lot of people have tried to figure out the order of these guys, and the order is the order of the map. So you have a map in your notes, all right? If you begin at Reuben, which is over here. Okay, Reuben's over there. If you begin at Reuben, and then you go to Judah, okay, then that means you're going to kind of move east. And then Levi or Levi is everywhere, so he's not going to be on the map. And then you have Benjamin, which you're going to go north now. And then you have Joseph, which is going to be just north of Benjamin, because you have Ephraim and West Manasseh and East Manasseh. That's all Joseph. Do you know why? Because those are the sons of Joseph, and Joseph didn't get his own inheritance, because the inheritance went to his two children, Ephraim and Manasseh, when Jacob adopted them. This is like a review of Torah, right? Okay, so anyway, you have that order that goes, but very interestingly, if you look at the blessings, a lot like the blessings when Jacob blessed his sons in Genesis. Now Moses gives the blessings, and these things that he blesses them with these words, they happen. Okay, when you read the rest of the Bible, it's like, yep, that's what happened to them. All right, beginning with Reuben. Reuben got in trouble, all right, and the rights of the firstborn were removed by Jacob, because Reuben slept with Jacob's concubine. All right? So the inheritance there was split into two. One went to Judah and the other to Joseph. Judah was given the right to rule over Israel. And where did Messiah come out of? Judah. Okay? So the right to rule over Israel. Joseph, however, where am I? I lost my notes. Judah was given the right to rule, while Joseph, or Ephraim, was given the double portion of the blessing, which meant wealth and fruitfulness beyond his other brothers. And we'll look at him when we get down to him, okay? And this gets real confusing because you have these names that intermingle. So Joseph, and then you have Ephraim and Manasseh. And then you have Israel, and then you have when Israel divides, and you have Israel and Judah. And then Israel becomes known as Ephraim because Ephraim was the largest. Well, we're reading right here that they're going to be fruitful beyond all their other brothers, which they were. They basically took over the northern kingdom. All of it became known as Ephraim. Okay? And next you have Judah, which is the ruling tribe. Judah is apparently going to be having wars, which they did. Where was Jerusalem? Judah. Okay, where was David? Judah. Okay, and all of the battles and all the wars that were fought there. And one of the words that are listed here is "Hear, Adonai, the voice of Judah." Okay, that's in the words in chapter 33 in the blessing. Hear, Adonai, the words of Judah. Hear, Adonai means Shema, Adonai, the words of Judah. So Moses is crying out on behalf of Judah because in order for Judah to survive, God is going to need to Shema Judah. Get it? Okay, so whereas we are to Shema God, hear and obey, in this circumstance, Moses is saying unless God hears and acts, then Judah's not going to make it. Okay? So God uses Shema even for him. Okay, then you have Levi or Levi, who are the priests, and their blessing, if you noticed, is focused on their being the ones that hold and teach Torah, and are the priests at all of the worship meetings and everything. Okay? And then Moses says something very interesting about Levi. He said, he said of his father and mother, I have not seen them, nor did he acknowledge his brothers or recognize his children. For they, meaning Levi, observed your word and kept your covenant. What is that about? Most likely, that's about what happened after the golden calf when Levi, the Levites, were called to go through and slaughter everyone that wasn't on God's side, even if they were their brothers or their sisters or their mothers or their whatever. If they weren't over here with us, start wiping them out. Which is very interesting because Yeshua uses the words about his brothers and his mothers and his sisters, and he says that no man is able to really follow me unless he loves me more than he loves his brothers and his mothers and his sisters. He even uses the word in one of the Gospels, if any man comes after me, he needs to hate his mother and his brothers and his sisters. I don't think he was simply pulling that out of the air. I think he was going back to this, to where the fact that the Levites were faithful on that day, following his word. Okay? Okay, now we have Benjamin. Benjamin's going to occupy a very small little strip of land. This is kind of interesting, to me it is. That's going to be right between the two most powerful tribes, Ephraim in the north and Judah in the south. Benjamin is the one that's going to be in the middle of them like a buffer zone. Okay? Because Ephraim and Judah eventually make war on one another, don't they? Okay? And Benjamin is right in the middle, stuck right in the middle. Okay? But listen, this is what's amazing. All right? Judah will later be known as Judea because it's where the Jews live. Jew means Jehudah, one of Judah. Okay? So Israel, the northern tribes, Ephraim and Israel, they were scattered to the rest of the nations. And then 180 or some years later, Judah was carried away by the Babylonians, and then they were brought back. They were able to come back. And when they came back into the land, they were known as Jews. All right? But the rest of Ephraim would be scattered to the nations, and they would basically merge with the pagan nations and lose their identity. Okay?
You say that Ephraim is the largest tribe, but well, Jews are from the tribe of Judah, but we know a lot of the Levites and the Benjaminites and I think some from the other tribes and numbers made their way in.
They did. They made their way back, but it wasn't in numbers that were significant. It wasn't in significant numbers. So you had vast numbers of Israel, okay, Ephraim, the northern kingdom, that were scattered, and they never came back. They're Irish, they're English, they're Scottish, they're Spanish, they have no idea. Any one of us could go back and, take a blood test and go, oh, my goodness, I originated from the tribe of Dan, which you don't want to do, but tribe of Dan, well, I got that in my blood. But it doesn't matter. Even that doesn't matter. Okay, what matters is where your heart is. But this is just fascinating, is that you have Paul, the apostle, who his job is he's the middleman in between the Jews and the Gentiles who are coming in to Israel. And where is he from? Benjamin. Right. Benjamin was a buffer, yes, between his father and the brothers. Right.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it's actually still around.
Well, some of them did get rather wiped out, right?
What do you mean by their own doing it? What's that right tribe I'm thinking of?
Which one? Dan. Benjamin blended in.
Did something with
Yeah. But really, they all blended in. Because by Yeshua's day, Israel is no longer tribal. Some of them know, like Paul, he knows his background. He knows, hey, I am this of this, and I'm of the tribe of Benjamin, and, yada, yada. But your basic, average, everyday individual, they were like, I don't know. I'm a guy from Galilee. Are you Jewish? Yeah, I think I am. Okay. So now you have Joseph. Joseph is made up of Ephraim and Manasseh because those are the name of Joseph's boys. The blessing of Joseph is that of fruitfulness and increase. The word Joseph means may he increase. Ephraim means God has made me fertile, and Manasseh means forget what is behind. Okay? As we already saw above, Joseph received half of the firstborn blessing of his father Jacob. The other half of that blessing went to Judah. Judah received power and authority to rule, while Joseph received a double portion of wealth and fruitfulness above all his brothers. But the double portion blessing was assigned to Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who had been elevated to the status of Jacob's sons instead of their natural position as Jacob's grandsons. That's like that, I am my own grandma. Have you ever heard that song, I am my own grandma? You guys never heard that? I am my own grandpa. Look it up. If you want to laugh, it is hilarious. It's an old song from the 60s. Anyway, so everybody gets that, right? Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, were adopted by Joseph's dad, Jacob, so that in a way they no longer belonged to Joseph, they belonged to Jacob. So they were elevated in their status, which is why they're on the map. Okay? All right. I'm not going to go over the words of Bradford there about the ox goring people and all that. Let's skip down to Zebulun. Zebulun's blessing has to do with rejoicing in his going out, and Zebulun has always been noted as being trade merchants. Okay, Issachar were known as being shepherds, and it says that they will rejoice in their tents, and they were the shepherding tribe because that's where they lived. Gad, it says that Gad will enlarge. That means that Gad will grow. Gad was one of the tribes that accepted land or territory outside the promised land as their portion. You remember when they were getting ready to go into the land? In the book of Joshua, they're getting ready to go in, and Gad and them, they look at the land. Actually, this is in the book of Deuteronomy. Moses brings it up, but then Joshua, it has to be brought up again. They look at the land, and they go, this land that we're standing on right now is where we want to be. We would like to be here. We'll let you guys go over the river and go into the land, but we'll remain here. And Moses was like, no, we're not going to play that game. You're not going to leave behind all your brothers when we got to go in and fight a battle. And the Gadites, they said, no, don't worry about that. We'll go with you. We're not going to go back to our land till all of you guys are settled in your land and we win all the wars. And when all that happens, then we'll go back and we'll settle over on that side of the river. So that's Gad, and you can see them on the map there where they were. Okay? And then you have Dan. Dan is very interesting. Okay? The tribe of Dan originally occupied occupied lowlands next to the infamous Philistine land, which would be down here on your map, right by the Mediterranean, right down at the bottom. On the left of your map, there's Dan, right next to Philistia. Well, Dan didn't like being right next to Philistia, so Dan moved north. But when they moved north, look at how far north they moved. All the way up here where you have this little dot that says Dan. And you know where that was? No? Well, yeah. Southern Syria. Where? Bashan. Right by a mountain. What was the name of that mountain? Mount Hermon. And you remember what was at Mount Hermon? Mount Hermon was the idol worship central in Asia. All right? I mean, it was where the idols lived and Baal lived and all of that. And Dan moved up there. And very interestingly, Dan became the tribe in Israel that brought idol worship to the rest of Israel. Okay? So they moved from down where their land was, because they were near the bad guys. Who wants to live near the bad guys? They moved up north near worse guys. Okay? Like gods. And they brought idol worship into Israel. And very interestingly, Dan is the only tribe that is left out of the 144,000 in the book of Revelation. Yep, no Dan. Dan's not in there. Yeah, but he's in there. Dan is not. Simeon had a curse, but what did Dan do? Brought what is the number one commandment? Don't worship other gods. Jehovah is jealous. He is a jealous God. Yes, all Israel was involved with that, but Dan is the one that kind of opened the door.
So Dan is in Iran?
Yeah, I think, well, Samaritans were not that far north. No, Dan is north of where Samaria would be. Samaria is below Galilee, right? So Samaria is below that lake. All that land where you see there, Gilead, Ephraim, Shiloh, West Manasseh, Jezreel, all that was like the land of the Samaritans. It was in that region in the days of Yeshua. So now you have Naphtali, who were blessed with the fertile land along the Sea of Galilee, and were where Yeshua would be raised, because he was raised in Nazareth. And then you have Asher, which was known as the region for high-quality olive oil, which is interesting, because Moses says about Asher, may he dip his foot in oil. Okay? And then you have Simeon and Levi. Both of them were cursed by Jacob for their ruthless treatment of the people of Shechem. Remember that? Because of what Shechem did to Dinah, their sister, they went basically and destroyed the Shechemites, gave Jacob a bad name, so he pronounced a curse on Levi and Simeon. Levi repented, okay, at the when they made the calf. Levi said, no, we're with you, all right? But Simeon ended up a very small tribe that was completely surrounded by Judah, and they vanished as a land, okay? But they are mentioned in the book of Revelation. All right. Now, very interesting. Moses blessed 11 of the 12 tribes of Israel. One of them disappeared. Okay? Yeshua blessed 11 of his 12 followers, disciples. one of them left him. Judas. Yeah. But isn't that interesting? Isn't that an amazing parallel? Here's another parallel. Simeon is the one that left, in quotation marks, all right? Judah is Judas, the son of Simeon. Okay? Moreover, Judas was a zealot, and that was the violent party of Jews who wanted to overthrow the Romans. And within the zealots, there was a group known as the Sicarii, who were assassins who went out and killed their brother Jews who didn't believe the way that they believed. Okay, they were like the radical Muslims, except they were the radical Jews of the day. So, very interesting. Okay, we end with Deuteronomy 34, where Moses goes up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the summit of Pisgah, across from Jericho. Okay, so if you look on your map, Mount Nebo is down in the land of Reuben. So from there, he's able to look out and get a really nice view of the rest of the land. Okay? There Adonai showed him all of the land, Gilead as far as Dan, and all Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, and the land of Judah, went all the way to the sea beyond, and the Negev and the plain, including the valley where Jericho, the city of date palms, is, as far away as Zoar. And Adonai said to him, "This is the land concerning which I swore to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Jacob. I will give it to your descendants. I have let you see it with your eyes, but you will not cross over there." And so Moses, the servant of Adonai, died there in the land of Moab, as Adonai had said. He was buried in the valley across from Beit Peor in the land of Moab, but to this day no one knows where his grave is, meaning known exactly where his grave is. Now, stop right there. And you may remember in your notes that I wrote that many Bible scholars, and I'm one of them, do not believe that the last couple of chapters that you've read were written by Moses. Okay? And there's a couple different reasons. One is because he died. And whoever wrote this is writing about the guy that died. Now, that doesn't mean that it's impossible. God could have sat down with Moses and, all right, we're going to write about your death. But there's something else in there, if you read it, that's like, oh, becomes obvious. And you'll read this in other places in the Bible, so maybe you'll have your eyes open, okay? Are these words, to this day? To this day, no one knows where it is. To what day? Yeah, it's written way after. Okay? To this day, whenever that is, to this day, no one knows where his grave is. Okay? What's the Holy Spirit? Maybe. I mean, I think he used a man to write it, though. I don't think the Holy Spirit wrote. Sure, absolutely. But probably was years later. It would have to be years later because he wrote, to this day, meaning the day that people are reading this after it was written down. There's a couple of other places where you'll begin to catch that in the Bible. Okay?
So that triangle that's right there by Mount Nebo, that means
That's a mountain. That's what that means. Yep. That triangle means a mountain. Now, Moses was 120 years old when he died, which is interesting. Why? It's a very specific number, and that number was given to whom? Noah. Remember, in Noah's day, God's like, nope, giving you 120 years. Moses lived to be exactly 120 years, and he died with his eyes undimmed and his vigor undiminished. Doesn't that make you wonder? Right? What that makes me wonder is his eyes undimmed and his vigor diminished. What did he die from? You know? Did he just have a sudden heart attack and drop dead? I don't know. It doesn't tell you. It's not in there. The people of Israel mourned Moses on the plains of Moab for 30 days. And after this, the days of crying and mourning for Moses ended. And then Joshua, son of Nun, full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him. The people of Israel heeded him and did what Adonai had ordered Moses. Since that time, there's another one. Ding! Oh! Since that time, there has not arisen in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom Adonai knew face to face. What signs and wonders Adonai sent him to perform in the land of Egypt on Pharaoh, all his servants, and all his land. What might was in his hand, what great terror he evoked before all the eyes of Israel. And all together they said, Hazak, Hazak, Vinexkazek, be strong, and let us be strengthened, which is what they do at the end of every book of the Torah when reading it. Okay, so you get just from reading that there were at least two, maybe many, many more editors of Torah. Okay? Doesn't mean it isn't the book of Moses. It doesn't mean that Moses didn't write parts of it, but parts of it are edited. It's obvious from looking at it. Parts of it are edited. So what? God uses many hands. Okay? They're known as the books of Moses. That doesn't mean that Moses wrote every word in the book of Moses, but so what? They're known as the books of Moses. They are. Moses is the hero. I mean, Yehovah is the real hero, but Moses is the man hero. Now, since that day, there has not arisen in Israel any prophet as great as Moses. Those words are no longer true, are they? That's right. Since the day of Yeshua, the words of Deuteronomy and the end of Deuteronomy are no longer true, because now there has arisen one greater than Moses. All right? That was the one that Moses pointed to. And it makes me wonder if when he was up on that mountain and he looked out there, if he had visions of something else. You know? It makes me wonder about some of these guys, if they had visions of the Lamb, and they had visions of, I just wonder sometimes. I don't think they were all just brains like me. I think they had visions and dreams and things like that. What? Pat Hadley, you don't have visions and dreams? Every now and then. But usually my visions are related to eating something late at night. And then I shouldn't eat. And then I have dreams and I wake up and I'm like, thank God that was a dream. Because if that was real, man, I've gone nuts. Okay, any question you want about Torah? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. It's not in there.
Where did Moses' son go?
Gershom. Well, he was a Levite. He was in the tribes, so he would have been one of the guys that was doing the stuff in the temple.
In other words, Moses went up to the mountain by himself, or just God just
Moses went up to the mountain by himself, yes, with the Lord. God led him up. Yep. Yeah, Moses, come on up. We're going to go up another mountain. Remember back at Sinai, Moses? It's probably one of the reasons he lived to be 120, because he hiked up and down and up and down and up and down. Moses went up, then Moses went down. Moses went back up. God said, go back down. So Moses went back down. He got what he needed, and then he went back up to God. Have you seen that mountain? Or what I think is that mountain? Man, oh man. And he was 80 when he did all that. He was older than any of us, maybe, I think. Yes, Dana. Right, right. Ah, right, right, right. It's interesting, right? Because of the way the land is. That's correct. They went over, Dana brought up, they went over the Jordan from the east to the west. Okay? When if you look at Egypt and where Egypt is, if you were to draw a line and draw them up to the land, they wouldn't have even had to cross over the Jordan. Just go right straight up the land. But you have a couple of different problems there. One is the wilderness that is there at the south is kind of a really desolate wilderness. Well, it's where they ended up wandering and everything. But the biggest problem is God did not want them going near that stretch of land on the water where the bad guys lived, the Philistines. They were, even when they left Egypt, God didn't let them go that way because he said they're going to go that way, they're going to look at the enemy, and they're going to run back to Egypt, right? Now, in one of the books, I think it's Jubilees, maybe one of the other books of old ancient Israel writings. In one of those books, it talks about, a group of Ephraimites in Egypt that left to go up to the land, but they left 30 years earlier than when Moses led them. And they went up the way of the Philistines, and they all got slaughtered. And the bones were left laying out on the road, which I think that the idea was that God said, I'm not going to lead them that way, because when they look at the bones on the road, they're going to get scared to death and run right back. So I don't know if that's true and if that really happened, but yes. Culture and naming. Okay, I'll repeat it so the people in Lincoln ear. Go ahead. The hated one, Job. Well, that's a really good question. Did Job's parents name him Job, the hated one? Or was that something that he picked up because of his personality or whatever?
Whoa, sorry. That's what I'm wondering, because like when Naomi said, "Call me Mara," because the Lord has dealt with me
Right.
harshly, bitterly.
Right.
Is that something that people did? Like Jesus renamed people, right?
Sure.
But did they do that? Like at a time in life when something happened, say Job lost everything, got sick, that he took on that name?
Yeah, I don't know if it was something that regularly happened, but I think it happened. I mean, God did it, right? So did he take it on, or was it that the writers knew that that's what everybody knew him as? The hated one, the ones that wrote the book of Job. But in the book of Jasher, Job lived when Pharaoh lived, king of Egypt, and was a very wealthy man, and visited Pharaoh. And they had a meeting about what they were going to do with all of these Israelites that were blooming in the land. And Job made a suggestion that he get rid of all the babies. And then you have this idea of Job being the hated one. But then you go read the book of Job, and you're like, is that guy? You know, I don't know.
Exodus chapter 1. And that was the first
Yeah,
abortion.
that's right. That we know of. Yeah, that's right.
I find it interesting that the Levites are supposed to be the priests and the calm ones, and yet we hear about them slaughter.
Oh, they're warriors. Yeah.
The golden calf as well as in the Jeremiah or Ezekiel.
Yep.
All the people that were then following false gods as well. They were just
The Levites were, they were not, little rabbis. The Levites were warriors, and think about what they did. Think about their job. They were butchers, and they had to have all that equipment. The guys that set everything up, took everything down, hauled everything everywhere. The guys that slaughtered the animals. Have you ever cut up one moose? The next day you're like, ow, everything hurts. So, yeah, they were strong. Go ahead.
Okay, we know that God gave the Israelites the land of Canaan. But the land that Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh settled in, it wasn't part of the original land.
Yes.
So when
It wasn't the original land, but it was the promised land.
then
Because it was a lot larger than Israel ever even occupied. They never, the land that God promised and outlined that he was going to give to them, it was never that big.
okay,
Israel was never that big because it went farther north, farther south, all the way down to Egypt.
then
Really.
Moses was standing in the land when he was looking at the land. He was on Mount Lebo.
Yeah,
So
correct.
he got to come into the land. He just didn't cross over the river.
Right. That's right.
So
Good. Anything else? Okay. How many of you have journals that you're reading or that you're going to read? Okay, hang in there. Keep at it. Did you enjoy day one? Yay. Day one of the journal. All right. So next week, be here and help my wife, who I know will do an amazing job. She's a really good teacher. How's that? James? No, I'm going to Guatemala on a mission trip with pastors. I'll see how much I'm able to bring back. Where I go there, that's one of the main things that they grow around that lake. And the lake is at 6,000 feet. Okay. Oh, I'll see if I can do that. But it is the best I've ever had in my life right there. And when I bring it home and I cook it here, it's good, but it's not as good as it is there. It's something, yeah, gotta be. All right, well, I will say good night to everyone. Bless all of you. And I hope that I will see you Friday night. I see that hand, Jan and John. Good night.